Welcome to Hacking the Startup PM interview, where we'll share tricks and tips on how to get into the top startups that you're looking at as a PM. Before we begin, I want to start off by saying you are enough. Regardless of where you are in your PM journey, whether you're a veteran PM or you're brand new to the role, you are enough as you are. So, in the product journey for early stage startups, you often see different categories of areas to focus on if you really are interested in landing a role. The first one being building inbound leads. The second being questions you should ask. The third one being the interview itself. Number 4 is sticking the landing. So after you get the role, how do you really make an impact? And the last one is how do you grow up and out of the role when you are a startup PM? Now, for the purposes of this presentation, we will be focusing more so on the interview. So the table of contents of the presentation is broken down into 3 main parts. The first one being the problem space, the second one being how to hack it, and the third one being examples that you can use that I've used myself, and I've also coached others on how to use it. So before we begin any further, I'll do a quick intro. My name is Katherine Chong, and I was employee number 3 at an edtech startup, of which I spent 10 years at, and I helped them go through multiple rounds of funding. And now I focus most of my work in startup product coaching, where I coach multiple VC-backed startups and specifically the PMs that work there. So let's start off with the problem space. First off, not all startups are the same. However, generally speaking, they do have these similar traits. Generally, startups and founder stacks have these following traits. First is that they're typically always low in time. You should have started 2 weeks ago. Everything is always under a very tight time constraint. 2, product talent is often lacking in a lot of startups. So often, even though a founder of a company is often the very first product manager, they really don't have refined product management talent. 3, even in cases where they might have product management talent, like say the co-founder was formerly a product manager, they will definitely lack the capacity to really take ownership of the role, as the founder is in itself a distinct different role than the product manager. And the last one, which is very important, is the immense high expectations. If you are planning to work at a VC-backed startup, there are immense expectations about the growth trajectory of that company. So we're not looking to build lifestyle businesses. We're looking to get double, triple, quadruple the type of metrics that you would normally see. Another thing that about startups and founder stacks that is also common to see is that between the two of culture fit and also a checklist of experiences, culture fit almost always wins. A startup is far more interested in investing in you as a person than you are as a skilled blade for hire. And that has a lot to do with how nascent the company is and how important that culture fit is, especially at such an early stage. This was a quote that was taken from a product manager that I've interviewed. And what they said was very poignant in terms of understanding what it's like to work at a super early stage startup. One is that for an early stage startup, where you're one of the very first PMs especially, you're really building out the founder's vision for the first 6 to 8 months. So expect that in the beginning stages, the ownership of the overall vision of what the product would be is mostly to the founder, and you're providing your product skills to aid them along that journey. Now, what is the ideal hiring scenario for startups? First is that they would love for you to be quick to learn and hire. Oftentimes for larger type of companies, the FANG style companies, you can hear about hiring processes that can take up to 3 months would be definitely common. Startups don't have 3 months to hire new staff every time. They would ideally have them in immediately and have them start working just because of the very time constraints that startups are held to. The second thing that would be ideal for a lot of startups is if you can demonstrate product chops to them immediately. Because that a lot of startups haven't been exposed to this talent, it'd be great for them to see what that product talent can do. The third thing that is very important for all startups in terms of all their early stage hires is the right type of attitude. How do you deal with mistakes, failures, and really bouncing back from it? And the last thing, which is incredibly important as well, is how do you rise to challenges, or whether you even do that. A common thing you will hear about startups is that working in a startup is wearing many hats. And how you rise to the challenge of these different hats is going to be critical for that startup success, especially in the early stages. If you're a type of person that you like to stick within the boundaries of your role, a startup might not be the best place for you. As a PM candidate, some of the common pain points that you'll experience through the job seeking process is pretty much one thing, which is frustration. You feel that the interview process is long, it's not fair, it often doesn't evaluate you on the skills that you might need in the role. And anybody who has ever even tried finding a job as a product manager, whether you're a veteran or totally brand new to the field, you'll experience them as a whole, as this is common in the industry. Now, the usual interview process, it follows this typical path. You go through a recruiter, you go through the hiring manager, you get some sort of case study or homework. Then you go through a carousel of interviews where you talk with tech design and maybe other stakeholders that you'll be working with closely. Go through a culture fit interview and then do references. This whole process can take quite a while to get through. Let's review quickly what the problem statement is and what are some of those requirements. The interview process is long and unfair for the candidate in most cases. 2, startups don't have much time to invest in finding better ways to interview. 3, they still, however, want a candidate that fits within the organization, right, to all those requirements that we highlighted prior. So that brings us to how we're going to hack it. A solution that I've come up with, that I've tried and coached others through, that I found incredibly successful for early stage startups. So you've probably heard of the typical job opportunity assessment of how to assess new opportunities as you see fit. Questions like, what stage is the company in? Explore, expand, extract. What industry fascinates you? What is a product you'll be working in specifically? Is this an IC or people manager role? Is this the compensation you're looking for? Etc. Right? There's many questions that you can ask upfront to assess whether this is the right opportunity for you. However, I found a major failure in some of these questions because not all problems are created equal. So, for example, let's go through a case study. Let's say the role is you want to be a product manager or a senior product manager. You want to work in the fintech industry. You want to work in a B2C type product, right? You're not interested in B2B SaaS. You want to work in the personal loan space. I'm going to describe to you 3 different company and their value propositions, and these are all taken from real companies, and see how you react to them. The first one is, we are addressing the financial literacy deficiency in today's youth, and we built a platform with gaming modules to make financial education more accessible. Number 2, we provide faster loans for small to mid-sized online retail businesses by connecting to their sales and operation data directly. Number 3, we are a blockchain-based borrowing and lending platform that allows users to leverage cryptocurrency to borrow US dollars. After hearing all 3 companies and their value propositions, you should already naturally start having an inclination towards one of these statements more than the other. This is why we bring ourselves to the hack itself. hacking it, to test your curiosity. So the area that I found wasn't emphasized enough in a lot of the job opportunity assessment questions and criteria and frameworks was that it never really indexed as heavily on the curiosity piece. So I've developed some of these tests to help you get there. Test number 1. Generate 20 to 30 questions about the problem space, such as what does the competitive space look like? Who are the customers? What area will you be spending time in? This is very, very critical because whenever I hear about a great value proposition from a company, my instinctual reaction is, oh, that sounds great. But then I give myself time to reflect and think about how many questions really pop up in my head without any additional prompts from the company or the co-founder. If I can generate anywhere between 1 to 10 questions, this is mildly interested, like in the terms that I can have a casual conversation, but I can't go really deep into the areas that this company is really exploring. If I found that once I can get past the 20 to 30 question mark and perhaps even exceed it, it shows me that I have far more interest in that area and I can actually generate these type of questions. The next test is to come bearing gifts unprompted. This is a test to see how your motivation, where your motivation really lies when asked to do some unprompted homework, if you will, to the company that you're going to be essentially interviewing for. Can you come bearing a gift before being asked to do any sort of assignment or any sort of interview? Can you provide them insight and value and impact in the interview process itself? That is a test of whether you are fascinated enough about this problem space as well. So here I have an example of developing your own case study on their product or idea. And test number 3, see their response. One of the things that also doesn't get emphasized enough in the interview process, especially if you're sitting in the candidate position, is that this is the opportunity for you to assess whether this is the company that is right for you. We want to see what happens when you share your ideas, bring innovation to the table, and see how that organization really reacts to it. And since the organization is an early stage startup and is often quite small, you're really just seeing how the co-founders really interact with you. So you want to see how they respond to ideas that aren't necessarily perfectly in line with what they had in mind. How do they respond at that point? And this is also a fantastic test to have. All right, so why go through all this process? What are some of the benefits for you? Well, there's many benefits, and let me go through them. First off, 1, you get to make a good impression fast. Instead of waiting to hear your responses through the course of an interview, you get to lead in with your best foot forward and start showing the company that you are actually fit for this role. Number 2, very important, is that you get to observe culture fit to see whether the way you work and the way they work is aligned. You also want to try to aim for an organization that really helps you thrive. As they mentioned in a lot of startups are a great place to learn, but they have to have an amazing environment for you to try different things, make mistakes, and recover from it. So you really want to get that culture fit assessment done early. And of course, you do want to do it in a way that isn't just a matter of asking a few questions. Number 3, you can demonstrate that you can pick up things fast. Recall that one of the requirements that a startup is looking for are individuals who are fast to hire, fast to learn. This is the perfect way to demonstrate it before they even need to talk to you any further, which is I've already started to think about your problem space, think about what pain points your customers are suffering through and how I would tackle this problem. Number 4, you can demonstrate structure with your line of thinking. So one of the common pain points of the product interview, the normal product management interview, is that there's many case studies, it's quite long, it takes many hours to get through. But a lot of that is to really try to test how your product sense is and how how you structure your thoughts. This is a fantastic way to encompass that requirement while doing something that is relevant to the company. Next, you can also have a much more meaningful discussion and interview. Instead of talking about a hypothetical case, for example, we can start moving the conversation towards what are you going to do on day one when you get into this job? And how are you going to tackle this problem that you've helped me identify? This back and forth will be much more meaningful and much more impactful to have with that hiring manager, because you are directly showing them what kind of metrics you are going to be measured against as a new hire. Number 6. This is especially important for individuals who are trying to become a product manager for the very first time. This will exercise your product thinking. By working on more and more problems like these, you are exercising your product thinking muscle. And by exercising that more, you inherently will get better at it over time. And number 7, most importantly, you can now be assessed based on how you work versus how well you answer questions. A lot of these times, these interviews on how to do well in interviews is actually very disconnected from how you do well as a product manager in the role itself. By showcasing how you work up front in the interview process, you can then be assessed based on that. So if you know it's not going to be a match, it's because how you work and how the organization wishes to work isn't quite aligned, in which case this is a blessing in disguise. But if it is perfectly aligned, a lot of the time organizations are willing to expedite the process of the interview to get you through the door a lot faster. And of course, the biggest benefit to you is the fascination and curiosity regarding this startup. Working in a startup is very, very hard. There's often long hours. There's usually blurred lines between roles in terms of responsibilities, and there's often a lot of fires that you have to put out daily. And these are just the highlights. With all jokes aside, the fascination and curiosity regarding a startup is really what's going to help power you through the tougher moments of working in one. And by being able to do all this work up front, you'll be able to know whether this is the right opportunity for you to begin with. All right, so now we talk about the downsides. The biggest downside to this method is really the time that is needed. The good thing is that there's a very simple mitigation plan. The mitigation actually exercises a bit of PM skills, which is your prioritization and time boxing ability. So it would probably be unwise for you to apply this method to every single job that you want to apply for. However, because the ask is quite hefty, this does open the conversation of whether this is something that is interesting to you to begin with. And one of the things to look at is, can you get through even test 1? So one of the things that I've done is use test 1 as a major gauge to see whether this is something of interest. Can I generate 20 to 30 questions on my own time about this startup and the problem space that they're in? If the answer is no, then I know it's not really worthwhile for me to proceed. If I can, then it shows me that, okay, we have a lot more curiosity there. Maybe I can move to the next step. Then the last thing is about time boxing. We don't want to do things like free labor where we're building out amazing case studies. I know you're amazing. We just want to show the organization we're interviewing for a good sample of our skills. So a common tactic is to use 2 to 3 hours, time box it and fix it, and show me what is the most impactful thing that you can do as a PM candidate to show me that you know what you're doing in this role in 3 hours, for example. And then wrap up your presentation and assignment to present back to the organization. These two strategies of being able to aggressively prioritize and also time box the assignments themselves has helped me tremendously in being able to find the next role for me. So now we get into the fun stuff, the examples. And here are some examples that I've seen and come up with over time that might help you. I've called these gift ideas because I present them upfront in a lot of interviews where I say, hey, I know you didn't ask for them, but perhaps this is a gift that you might like. So, one, you could do what a 180-day product vision. So talk to me about a longer period of time and how you're going to walk through that. So you could do it in 180 days. You could do it like a smaller, like 90-day cycle, regardless of what you're kind of aiming to do. Walk me through what success looks like in a given time frame and what your plan is, given that you have like full freedom. Two, an end-to-end product takedown of a user flow. What are the issues, opportunities, bugs, bug tickets, prioritization, and user flow options that you can see based off of something that they've already presented? So this is great for organizations who have an MVP that's out in the market already, and you're providing insight in terms of how it can be better. Number three, pricing strategy analysis. What are the different pricing opportunities and what is the overall business impact relative to the different product roadmap items? So we can start talking about the economics behind their business and what you're seeing there. Another one could be a series of A/B test plans, especially if you're leaning more towards being a growth product manager. You can walk through how you would break down your A/B test and what are the key metrics that you're trying to optimize for, given what you know about the company from a public-facing standpoint. Number three, dashboard and analytics. What would a dashboard look like to give these key success metrics? Could you kind of build that out for us? This is especially relevant if you want to lean more towards being like a data product manager and you really want to stay around the data side. Number four, another great option that is something that we product managers have to do quite often is external tool assessment. Let's say that they need external tools, external APIs to be able to complete certain things. Like let's take a look at, let's say, a customer success platform. You can do a tool assessment and look at it and try to talk through about which ones are the best ones to implement from a technical standpoint, from a business standpoint, and why you chose which one you did. That can also be incredibly useful for an organization as well. Now, as a summary, one, come bearing a gift, a case study, something that can demonstrate your curiosity about a problem. Number two, demonstrate in advance your interest, initiative, and product thinking. Number three, and do a baseline level assessment of whether you can work together. And number four, most importantly, come in roaring as a candidate. All right, my name is Katherine. I really hope that this presentation about hacking the startup interview has helped you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Bye.